Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Madeline, and I'm excited to be with you today. It may not be a full 20 minutes. I'm here at the hospital, but I wanted to sit down and chat with you guys very quickly today about maternal mortality. It's such a huge issue that we are understanding more about these days, and really trying to make sure that we're doing everything possible for women in this country as it relates to maternal mortality. So as you join in, please just send me a wave in the chat box. Let me know you're here, and that'll be great. And we'll get started in just a few seconds. Hello, good afternoon, Patricia.
Hi.
Oh, hi, good afternoon.
I'm just checking the return man over here, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Oh, yeah, I was like, where's the voice?
Okay. All right, great. So, we are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Hi, good afternoon. Lee, good afternoon. Thank you both. We're going to be talking about maternal mortality today and ways that we can help support our pregnant and postpartum sisters. Okay, great. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much. It's great to see all of you today. Okay, so let's, hi, Michelle, thanks so much for joining. Thank you so much. I'm glad you all are here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm at the hospital today, and so I'll probably just have right around 15 minutes to talk with you guys. But this is such an important topic that I wanted to make sure that we spend some time really understanding what's going on with maternal mortality in this country. And I want to share with you guys 4 ways to support our pregnant sisters. Okay? So, when we talk about maternal mortality, we're talking about death that occurs in women who are either, hi Michelle, thank you so much for joining, who are either currently pregnant or in their postpartum window. And we count that time period as going up to 1 year after a woman gives birth. So it's kind of a wide range, but it's intentional because a woman's body continues to go through changes during that whole period. So just to understand what type of numbers we're talking about, in this country, and this is using the CDC Pregnancy Mortality Surveillance System data, we estimate that there are 17 deaths per 100,000 births in this country. And that's the most recently available data that we have. Hey, Faith, hi, thanks so much for joining. It's great to see all of you. So that's based on the most recent data that we have from CDC, 17 deaths per 100,000. Every year in this country, about 700 women die from pregnancy-related causes. And that's really important. One of the main reasons this has been a big issue, especially the media is finally paying it more attention the last few years, is because the racial ethnic disparities. Hi, Tasha. Thank you so much for joining. The racial ethnic disparities on this issue have really been alarming, and they are a cause for concern. The racial ethnic disparities are huge. Now, before I talk about the disparities in this country, I also want to say that those 700 deaths that we see every year for women, either when they're pregnant or in the postpartum period, that's higher than any other country. So think of this, we, the U.S., we're this industrialized, highly industrialized nation, and we do not yet have a good handle on maternal mortality compared to other countries in this world. And that's including, we have a worse maternal mortality rate even than some countries that are not as industrialized as we are. So again, we have a lot of work to do. So again, by the end of this talk, we'll talk about 4 ways that we all can support our pregnant and postpartum sisters. Okay? So when we talk about the U.S., and I'm going to show you this because I know some of you guys out there are visual learners like me. Oh, and let me pause for a minute to give my other intro. I'm moving ahead of myself because I'm in the hospital here. But again, I'm Dr. Madeline, your board-certified OBGYN, international speaker, and published author. I help busy women access gynecology care and birth control on their time so that they can get the help that they need in a truly free way, allowing them to have more control over their lives. And I'm also passionate about health equity. So our talk today is really focusing on the health equity part and the fact that women of color are disproportionately dying when it comes to pregnancy-related causes. So I'm going to show you this to just give you guys more of an understanding. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone today, but this just shows, if you can see here at the bottom, the numbers and the racial ethnic categories. And so when you look at pregnancy-related deaths, for every 100,000 live births, about 13 white women die, 30 Native American or Alaska Native women die, and 41 black women. So you guys can see that there's a huge racial gap when you look at those types of things. Now again, compared to other countries, all of those numbers are bad. But when you look specifically at what's going on with non-Hispanic black women, Native American women, the issue is really something that we need to get a better handle on. Some of you may have heard recent stories in the news. You know, there was a Native American sister out in the Southwest just earlier this year who had twins and who was complaining of some cardiac discomfort, and she ended up dying. She didn't make it. She was trying to get in to see her healthcare provider and wasn't able to be seen in time. And there are a range of things that go into these stories. More recently, there was a sister in the Bronx who was pregnant during this COVID-19 pandemic. And if you guys remember, in March and April, it was so hard to get in to see different providers because everyone was concerned and no one really wanted to bring people into the hospital system unless it was a true emergency, just because there was so much COVID going on. Anyway, an awful outcome to that situation. By the time the young sister got into the hospital in the Bronx to be seen, they did an emergency C-section to deliver the baby, and unfortunately, she did not make it. It was too late. One of the things that is a common theme among some of these scenarios that we hear about, and one of the reasons we're doing a big push to try to really do a better job with maternal mortality, is that when they've done studies, when they've looked at all these different deaths that have happened in the United States, about 2/3 of them are preventable. That's a huge number, y'all. So when they look at everything, that means that there was some intervention that could have happened before the outcome, the death outcome, that could have saved that woman's life or saved the baby's life. Hello, Dr. Banga. Thank you so much for joining. And so, again, that's another reason why this topic of maternal mortality is so important. It's one thing if there are deaths happening and there's no way to prevent them, but these are deaths that are preventable in a large part. There was a study that was published out of New Orleans where they looked back at hundreds of deliveries and births in the state over a number of years, and they found again that about 60% of those deaths were preventable, especially for black women. 60% for black women. I think it was less than 10% were preventable for white women. So again, there's a racial disparity here that we have to be aware of and recognize and be willing to do something about. So, one of the things I want to talk to you about when we talk about 4 things that we can do, I think some people feel like, oh, this is way out of our hands. This is too big for us to get a handle on. But I do want to encourage you that there are some things that we can do as women who may be pregnant, who may be sister friends or aunts, grandparents, cousins with someone who may be pregnant. There are things that we can help them remind them of or help bring to the table that can make a difference. Absolutely. We know absolutely that one of the main underlying things when it comes to these racial ethnic disparities and maternal mortality is this systemic racism. There's a lot of conversation about racism in this country going on right now, but absolutely this has been, racism is one of the things that's contributing to what we see going on with maternal mortality. So four things that I think are very important for all of us as sister friends and people who may know and help and support women who are pregnant. Four things I think very important for us to know to help people feel empowered. One, absolutely, please get prenatal care. Prenatal care is great because at least it puts you in contact with a medical team. That team often includes an obstetrician, but it doesn't always have to. Some people opt instead for a midwife. Hi, Melzy, thanks so much for joining. Hey, Lauren, thanks so much for joining today. And so that team might include an obstetrician, a midwife. It could include, a doula, and we'll talk more about that later, different nurses and medical assistants. I say that the first thing is to please get prenatal care because that's how we get to keep you on our radar. Prenatal care is very important. Some women these days, I'm seeing more women come in, maybe they haven't had prenatal care, maybe, there's a lot going on with COVID, people have lost their jobs, they've lost their insurances. I definitely want to encourage you guys to look for those clinics where they will not require insurance. They have community health centers in some areas. Google community health centers or maternity care and prenatal care to see what's available in your local area. If you feel really badly and it's, you feel shortness of breath, chest pain, anything like that in your pregnancy, it's absolutely okay to go to the emergency room as well. So the first thing I want you to do in terms of things we can do differently or consider and think about is please get prenatal care when you can. Absolutely. Okay. So the second part of that relates to racial bias, because sometimes people will say, well, I was going to go in, or I did go in and I didn't like the team. I felt some kind of way. They weren't treating me respectfully. That is absolutely documented to be true in a lot of cases. Racial bias is a huge issue when it comes to, care in general in this country, a lot of things in this country. But when it comes to maternal mortality, finding and having a team that you identify with, that you think hears you out, that you think is compassionate and empathetic, that is so important in terms of getting the maternity and prenatal care that you need or that's important for you to have. And so I want you to take note of that. If you are supporting a sister friend and she tells you that she doesn't like her provider or that the provider's office treats her some type of way, hear her out, help her find other providers. There are more providers out there, and I don't want women to feel that they have to be tied into one provider. Hey, Soror, thank you for joining. I appreciate y'all being here. So that's something else to consider. What are the range of providers in your area? Another thing also is, and there's some people are starting different social media websites to talk about different providers and share information with other sisters. And so if a sister has a bad experience with one provider, there are networks of sisters, and I applaud this. I think this is a good thing. There are networks of sisters who are saying, hey, this OB over here is not the greatest. Maybe try this one over here. Or this office over here made me feel some kind of way. I think this office over here, they listen to you a little bit more attentively. So I want you to make sure that that's the second thing. Find a provider, an OB provider, who you feel hears you out. A lot of what we see going on with maternal mortality is related to people not hearing us the same. Us meaning women of color, black women especially. They're not hearing us the same when it comes to pain, to concerns about things going on. I had a patient come in last week, and she was feeling concerned. For those of you who have been pregnant in the past, she was feeling concerned. She was about 21 weeks pregnant, and she's like, oh, doc, I hate to bother you, but I just, I don't feel quite right. This was her third pregnancy. She's had like one C-section, one vaginal delivery. And I encouraged her. I said, it's important for you to let me know or let someone know when you don't feel right, because it's all good. It's all important, and it's all appropriate for us to check out. She, like many patients these days, hey, Dr. Brandy, thank you so much for joining. Like many patients these days, people are on watching TV, they're on social media, they're Googling things. And so we also have to be aware as providers that patients have more information, and so they are they are having more questions. They're being more attuned to things that are going on with their bodies, and it's absolutely important that we hear them out and we make sure that they feel that they have someone who's listening to them and paying attention to their concerns. So that's the second thing. Okay, so the first thing is please, please, please get prenatal care or help your sister friend access prenatal care, even if she doesn't have insurance or something like that. And the second thing is to be mindful that providers definitely have racial biases. This is something, again, that's been noted in many, many studies. It's something that we're starting to address more in this day and age. But you guys, we are 400 years since 1619, 400 plus years since 1619. So we have a lot of work still to do in terms of addressing that deeply ingrained racial bias. And, a lot of studies and information that we have about obstetrics and gynecology was built on the backs of women who were not consented, did not have anesthesia, Black women who were enslaved, and also women in Puerto Rico, from some studies that have been done in other parts of the world with women of color, with Black and brown women. So just keep in mind that we have a long way to go in terms of racial bias. And the more that you can feel empowered and speak up about things that are going on, the better job we can all do, okay, with helping make sure that our sisters feel supported. So what's the third thing? Now, this is for, I'm speaking directly to the women themselves with this one. Please, hi, Dr. Eugene. Thank you so much for joining. So the women themselves, it's important that you understand and write down, if you have to, as much information as possible about your medical history. If you've ever had high blood pressure, if you've ever had diabetes, if you've had, a clot in the bottom of your leg that may have gone up to your lungs or your heart, it's so important that you share that information with your care team, because all of that helps make sure that we can take the best possible care of you and make sure that you are as safe and healthy as possible during your pregnancy and after your pregnancy. Again, I can't impress enough upon you how important those are. Sometimes it's also important, all times it's important also to understand your family history. For many women, I get it. A lot of times in our cultures, there are certain things that families don't discuss. You're just not supposed to ask certain questions. And that's okay. Ask as much as you can, understand as much as you can, and just share as much as you know with your provider, so that, again, it helps round out the picture of how we take the best possible care of you. Okay, so that's the third thing. So again, just to remind you of the first two things: one, please get prenatal care; two, understand racial bias and navigate the system differently. Seek a different provider if you feel that your concerns are not being heard adequately. The third thing is to share as much information as possible about your medical history and also your surgical history. If you've had different surgeries, whether it's a myomectomy, an ectopic pregnancy, an appendectomy, gallbladder removal, anything at all, please make sure you share that history. The fourth thing that I really want to share with you guys is about the topic of doulas. Now, doulas have been around for a very long time. Doulas are basically people who help support women throughout their pregnancy. They can help you during the prenatal period. They can help you during the pregnancy. They can help postpartum. And doulas are great. Sometimes people find they consider doulas as a barrier to the process, but I don't. With what we see going on in maternal mortality, it's really kind of like an all hands on deck situation. So I think we need as much support and advocacy as possible for pregnant women, especially for women of color. And so doulas are lay persons who, again, they specialize in working with women during their pregnancy. A lot of times they will, a pregnant woman might identify a doula in her community and decide to hire her to work with her during the pregnancy. And doulas will a lot of times meet with the women in person, prenatal, help support them in prenatal care, help serve as an advocate, and help that woman ask different questions, help make sure that if the woman did express a concern and maybe that provider, that OB or that midwife didn't respond, or nurse practitioner didn't respond appropriately, that doula can help advocate on the part of that woman to make sure that woman's concerns are heard. Or sometimes they can even identify something that could be helpful with getting the woman the care that she needs in terms of prenatal care. So I definitely encourage you guys to learn more about doulas. Google doulas and look up women who might be in your area. Actually, let me clarify that. Most doulas are women, but I'm aware of at least one doula who was a man in the Pennsylvania area. So there can sometimes be doulas who are men as well. So I don't want to discriminate. There can be men who are doulas. But again, doulas are great. They really provide an extra amount of support. Now, one caveat to this. Before COVID-19, doulas were very much able and encouraged to be part of the in-person delivery process. Doulas would oftentimes be in the room with a woman who was in labor, helping as part of that process, whether it's positioning, breathing, just really being full on laying on of hands and being fully engaged in terms of support for women in labor. COVID-19 has changed that. A lot of hospitals in the country, at least while we're still going through this COVID-19 pandemic, have shifted to a protocol where only one person is allowed in that labor room with that woman. And most times, for obvious reasons, a woman is going to choose either her spouse or her partner, sometimes a parent figure, a mom. And so doulas are less able to come into the room during COVID-19. However, doulas are very, a lot of people have gotten very innovative and creative during this COVID-19 pandemic. So there are some doulas who have begun to have online platforms where you can, some people have different iPads and stuff in a labor room so that you can communicate and interact with the doula while you're in labor, even if that doula isn't physically present with you. And so that's another way to make sure that you are able to keep doulas engaged. The same thing with postpartum. The care that we give pregnant women has been strengthened in recent years, along with ACOG and other institutions. Hi, Esther. Thank you so much for joining. Along with American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and other institutions, we've strengthened that postpartum period. We call it the 4th trimester now, so that we can just help make sure that women are able to access the care that they need even after they deliver. Because again, when I started, I showed you guys the chart, and I just explained to you that pregnancy-related deaths continue for 1 full year postpartum. And so it's important to consider that entire time. Hi, Janet. Thanks so much for joining. It's important to consider that entire time when we're talking about making sure women have the care that they need, especially Black and brown women. Okay? So when a woman is postpartum, a doula can again help with all of that. If a woman goes home and her blood pressure is borderline, one of the things we're doing more of in the age of COVID-19 is figuring out a way to help women get blood pressure cuffs at home. Is there a way to check their blood pressure? Let me say that when we talk about these pregnancy-related deaths and this chart that I showed you early on, the majority of these deaths, especially for Black women, are related to hypertension disorders and also to bleeding disorders. And so those are two things we watch very, very carefully, right after a woman delivers and in the full postpartum period. And so if a doula is involved, she helps to navigate part of that process with the woman. None of this is meant to take away anything, of course, from the primary care team, the obstetricians, the midwives, and all of that. But again, a doula is an additional safety net and advocate for a patient and a woman that is very much appreciated in these times of really just alarming maternal mortality and deaths that, by and large, based on the data, can be prevented. So those are the 4 things I wanted to talk about today in terms of when we think about maternal mortality, when we think about the racial disparities, when we think about the fact that Black women are dying at a rate 3 to 4 times higher than white women, and Native American women are dying at a rate 2 to 3 times higher than white women. There's a whole lot that we need to be mindful of, that we need to pay more attention to when it comes to taking care of our Black and brown sisters. So let's just recap what those 4 things are that I want you to be mindful of as we continue to support our sisters who might be pregnant or postpartum. Okay, the first thing is please, please, please get prenatal care. Even if you are without insurance, try to, if you can, locate something nearby that allows you to access prenatal care, even if you don't have insurance. Some community health centers are able to do that. And again, it's just really important to keep that in mind. Thank you, Dr. Banga. Yes, these statistics are definitely alarming. And I figure the more information we have, the better we can do for our sisters, right? You know, we all want our pregnant ladies to do okay, and their babies as well. So the first thing is please get prenatal care. The second thing is definitely be mindful of racial bias. It is there. No one is denying that it's not there. If you see it and it's something that really concerns you, I definitely encourage y'all to seek out other providers, find other partners who can support your sister friend or you on your pregnancy journey. The third thing is share as much information as possible about your medical history, and including high blood pressure, diabetes, any history of clots, anything where you may have had to take blood thinners at some point of your life. Those are all important for your care team to know about. And the fourth thing, absolutely, please positively consider doulas. They're great. A lot of women are out there working as doulas. Many women actually, some doulas describe that it's their own personal experience, but then also seeing things happen in the medical system that encourage them to become doulas. They have some doulas that describe going to different hospitals and seeing women treated differently based on race, ethnicity, based on the hospital that they're in, and based on type of insurance, that really inspired them to want to do more to help women, all women, but particularly Black and brown women. And so definitely consider including doulas as part of your care team. So those are the four things that I wanted to share with you today as we really consider things that are going on in terms of maternal mortality in this country. We've got to do better, y'all. This has been a centuries-old problem, and women of color are just so much more affected. And so, as we begin to work on solutions, let's work on solutions together and really embrace and consider this option. And let me know if you have any questions. Okay, great. Thank you again, Dr. Banga and Dr. Bowling, for joining. And Lee, thank you so much. Natasha has a question. What questions should we ask in choosing an OBGYN? Great question, Tasha. So, explore. A lot of people are on social media these days, or they at least have a website. Check their website. Where do they deliver? What is their patient population like? Do they interact and take care of a wide range of patients? That's something to be mindful of. What do the patients say about that provider? Sometimes there'll be patient testimonies on different websites, and you can read that and get a sense of who that provider is, how they do things, who they take care of. And then also you can call and schedule an informal informational session with the provider and ask some questions that you might have. Okay. Michelle has a question. You would think the U.S. would mirror after some countries that have lower birth mortality rates. You're absolutely right, Michelle. Both birth mortality and maternal mortality, compared to other countries, we're just not doing as well. And so some of the things that we're trying to put in place now, hopefully will make that better. One of the things I didn't mention is a recent law that was passed back in late 2018, and it actually gives states the power to collect more data and information whenever there is a maternal death, so that they can review what happened, what went wrong, and get some lessons learned for how to do better. And this was actually stimulated after, the devastating maternal death that happened in California a few years ago. You guys may have heard about it. Judge Hatchett's son was married to a young sister, Kira Johnson, and she had a scheduled C-section, delivered her second beautiful baby boy, and after that C-section, had blood that was in her urine catheter, her Foley bag, and was complaining of pain, and her husband tried to get the attention of a number of staff persons, and long story short, it was an awful outcome. They waited too long before recognizing that there was an issue and taking her back to the OR. When they took her back to the OR, they found that her bladder had a cut in it, and that's why there was bright red blood in her Foley bag. And unfortunately, she had bled so much and for so long at the time they finally took her back that she did not survive. And so that instance and that scenario kind of caused a groundswell of concern about the things that have been going on in this country as it relates to maternal mortality. And so this bill was signed into law in late 2018 to help all of us, but especially, states and localities do a better job of getting the information, giving it back to the providers so that they can do things more systematically. The concern in that case was that if Ms. Johnson were a white woman, would it have taken them as long to recognize her concerns, to follow up, to get her back into the OR? And based on some of the data I've shared with you, the answer is no, it would not have taken them this long. And that's just real talk. That's me telling you that as an obstetrician, but also looking at the data and listening to some of the stories, the publicly available stories that are out there. Thank you, Michelle, for your comment. This information is very empowering. Good. That's what I want. I want us to all be a part of this network and this circle of helping our sisters. And Tasha asks, should we lead more towards choosing an OBGYN of color? Tasha, that's a very good question. So there are some studies that suggest that providers of color, I don't know if you saw, there was a recent study that related to infant births, and that showed that infants who were cared for by doctors of color were more likely to survive and do well compared to infants who were cared for by white doctors. Again, that's the science, that's the data, and so it's likely that data extrapolates to the world of OB as well. But absolutely, those data are very clear for in the world of neonatology, or for those who take care of newborn babies. And one of the things that I really am passionate about is, mentoring this next generation of doctors and scientists so that we can make sure that we have more of us who are part of the solution. That's the big thing. If we know that there's racial disparities, if we know that there are racial biases in the system among providers and all of that. Hey, Sean, thank you so much for joining. So if we have all of those facts and all that information, it absolutely matters, and it makes a difference that we have more of us who are working as part of the solutions. And so yes, I do think it's important to at least explore and consider and examine the same way you would examine any other provider when you're choosing an OBGYN. And if your research shows you that an OBGYN of color, whether she's a Black, Native American, Latino, Hispanic, is someone who's more appropriate and matches what you think would be the best fit for you, absolutely, that's the way to go. I'm going to close by sharing a story with you guys. So when I was pregnant with my first son, even though I'm an OB, I kind of wanted more of a holistic kind of midwife approach to my pregnancy and delivery experience. And so, I looked around in Atlanta and I found someone who I thought was going to be the right fit, a Black female OB, and probably had about 2 visits. And, for a variety of reasons, it turned out that she wasn't the best fit for me. Now, all of us are different people. It's important that you find the best fit for you. And so, and that's me even as an OB, having to look around and really make sure that the person I chose was the best fit. So I happened to be talking to another colleague, and he recommended this other colleague that I knew of and had worked with her a little bit. And I went to see her, and when I tell you, it was just like, it was magic. She was the best OB for me. She was also a Black female. And, I then went on to deliver my first son with her, my second son with her. And for my third son, even though my insurance had changed, I called my insurance company and I was like, yo, I need this doctor. I need Dr. Smith. I need her. We have a connection. I need her for continuity. And, it was, and they approved the change, and I was able to deliver with her. And so I share that story with you guys to let you know that even for me as an obstetrician, navigating the world of how to find a provider when you're pregnant, it wasn't just seamless. I searched and I found someone who was absolutely the best fit for me. and I was able to, share different concerns I had when I was pregnant. Pregnancies happened, and they went well. I have no complaints at all. And a few years ago, I took her a photograph of her three babies that she had delivered, my three sons, who are now 21, 19, and 14. And this OB experience can be a beautiful thing. And I just want to make sure that you all stay encouraged, and that we all help our sisters who are pregnant or may be pregnant in the future or postpartum. Just have as much love and support around them as possible, because we gotta do a better job with these maternal mortality rates. And while we wait for the institutions to kind of evolve out of this centuries-long history of biases and systemic racism that's part of the problem, let's all in our small way be a part of the solution. So again, I want to thank you guys for joining. I am Dr. Madeline, your board-certified OBGYN, international speaker, and published author. I help women access gynecological care and birth control access on their time based on their busy schedules to make sure that they can get the care and the support that they need. Please follow me on social media. My handle is at Dr. Madeline MD on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. That's DrMadeline MD on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you all so much, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Okay, bye-bye.